Hello, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, we're so excited you decided to stop by. Hey, you can catch us every Wednesday evening, 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Time. We want to see you right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. Again, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades and Justice podcast, a chance where you can hear about justice and injustices here in our country. Again, Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hello and welcome to Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, I am your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill, and you can always catch me at www.drevelynhill.net. Hey, we got a fantastic show for today. We have the one and only Chanel McKinley with us, and I'm going to yield the mic. First, I want to say welcome, Chanel. We are extremely excited and privileged that you are with us today.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Hill. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Well, good. Well, we're going to jump right in. I have known you for, I'll just say several years. I'll just put it like, but the neat thing I knew about you from the very beginning, you're a woman that gets things done, because you were sharing with me for a minute. You were going to school, you was working, and you had kids, and it was just a lot going on. You persevered. You got whatever degrees you were going after. You were successful in that. You were looking for a new job. You were successful in that. It's like, you know what? I need to ride her success train. And so today, if you don't mind, just give us a little bit about your journey from where you were maybe to where you are now.
Sure, I can. Yeah, we've known each other a very long time. Several years is just a tip of the of the bucket.
Exactly.
I was born and raised in Wyandotte, so I'm definitely a dot girl in the heart. So I'm a community person. I've always have been, and that has been influenced by my mother. He used to work at Job Service when it was at 552 State. Some people may remember that, where that's the agency that people will go and look for jobs. And she loved helping people. And I just remember going up there to her job and watch people interact with her. And it was just more than just a job, but that she cared about their families. My mom passed in 1991, and Dr. Hill, I could tell you, when the funeral, her clients came to the funeral. Wow. That's how much impact that she had. And I remember being in Leadership 2000, that was one of our questions: who influenced you in being into the human services, role? And I always said it was my mom. So I have 3 children, and when I say growing, I used to be on I used to be on an assistance, and lived in subsidized housing. And I remember my oldest son coming to me and says, "Mom, I want an Elmo." And I couldn't even buy an Elmo. And I believe to this day it's the driving force. And he's 31. So that's the driving force of, him. Yeah. And so, but I waited until my kids was a little older, and I decided to go and get back in school. And life happens, things happen, relationship happens, and so it took me a little longer than I wanted to get my bachelor's in human services management, but I finally did that. And during that time, I was also working for a non-for-profit organization in Wyandotte County. Had been there 22 years.
Wow.
And so when I was close to getting my degree, in my bachelor's, my first degree, um, I believe that I had an awakening that I really wanted to do something with my degrees, but also to make a big impact in the community because
Mm-hmm.
of the organization that I work for, who really catapult me to do many things, and training opportunity, educational opportunities, community groups and boards, and I just feel like I needed to put a degree behind my experiences.
Uh-huh.
And so I decided to finish school, and um, I had a talk with God. Like, hey,
All right.
had a talk with God, and
Yes,
he didn't show
ma'am.
me the water when he wants you to move. And so
Yes.
he didn't want me complacent. I did. I got complacent. He's like, no,
Yes.
that's not where you want me.
Yes.
So I just told him it's either the healthcare field or the criminal justice field. Which one you want me to do? So I met this wonderful man, and Randy George, who is the executive director of the Village Initiative. And by this time my kids are older, and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got back into the groove, and finish up the degree. And so he it was a pulling, to
Mm-hmm.
I was in community meetings with him, and I love what the village was doing. I love the
Mm-hmm.
impact that it was making on individuals coming out of incarceration who wanted that second chance. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I prayed about it. And I remember one of the prayers my mom used to do. She says, I prayed I want to be on the job that God wants me to be on, not
Mm-hmm.
me, not of my choosing. And
Wow.
so I said that same prayer, Dr. Hill, said
Uh-huh.
that same
Uh-huh.
prayer. And I remember God said, the village is where you need to be. So I resigned
Mm-hmm.
from the village, and from the organization. And on in the early part of November, I went to Randy and I said, I want to come and be a part of the village team. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, Chanel, we don't have any funding. And I said, faith without works is dead. So God took care of me this far. He'll take care of me going forward. And I resigned and came to be part of the Village Initiative, and haven't missed a paycheck since. So,
Wow. So are you telling me they did not recruit you? You just stepped out on faith and went there.
yep, yep,
Amazing.
yep. Quit my job of
Wow.
22 plus years and said, what's the worst what could happen is me looking for another job. But yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness. All these years I've known you, I did not know that part of your journey. Thank you for sharing
yeah,
that. I want to share a scripture because I believe it goes just so perfectly with the work that you do. This is Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17, which says, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow.
yeah,
So that to me nails it for a lot of the work that you do. And I can't wait to hear more about your journey, some of the challenges, some of the victories, some of your successes. It has got to have been quite a ride. So,
yeah.
with the village, you never shared right yet kind of what does the village do, and
Mm-hmm.
why did what they do steer your whole life? It made your whole, it's like you made a U-turn
Yeah,
in life just
yeah.
to get with Village Initiative. What in the world did they have going on?
When I first got to know what the village was doing with the returning citizens, it did kind of trigger back when I was part of the Wyandotte Emergency Assistance Coalition, and I
Mhm,
was over a subcommittee, and the
mhm,
subcommittee was housing. And I remember thinking, all these shelters, at the time, they had shelters for women and children, for veterans, for men. but nothing for
Uh-huh.
those who come out of incarceration. I call them the forgotten homeless. And I
Oh.
remember writing a letter to the warden at the time and said, I'd like to bring my subcommittee to Lansing, so we can interview a couple of those who's about to come out. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember, we went there and we had lunch and had a big spread. The warden made sure we ate and everything. And during the time, we had two guys, was a Hispanic male and an African American male, and they came and sat at the table and we interviewed them. And I asked them, what is your biggest concern coming out? Well, the difference was that the Hispanic male had a support system. He still had his wife and his mother and children. And then the African American male didn't have anyone. And he lost contact with his grandmother. He hadn't talked to her years, no family, no anything. And he said to
Wow.
us, he said, I am more scared about what will happen to me, what I did to get in here will happen to me. So
Wow.
after we had the interview and stuff like that, I did follow up. And
Mm-hmm.
sure enough, the Hispanic male got out, support system, but the African American guy did not, because he said while he was in prison, he felt like he was somebody that he mattered. Coming out, no support
Wow.
system, nowhere to walk that journey with him, to help him become self-sufficient and productive and empower him that
Mm-hmm.
he can make
Mm-hmm.
different choices than what he's being to get him, got him where he was.
Mm-hmm.
So that triggered that. When I found out what the village did, I'm like, oh my God, there's really something here.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be a part of, and I always say reentry is a movement. I want to be a
Mm.
part of that, and that was
Yes.
my prayer. And so so Randy asked me to be the program director to put structure into the
Yes.
village. So I took my skills and everything that I've obtained and learned and got educated in and just brought it to the village and helped them develop that piece. And
Mm-hmm.
so now we have grown and still growing, and the you see the transitional houses that we're now building,
Mm-hmm.
the capital campaign for that, and how the unified government had gave us those lots, being very supportive, the commissioners
Mm-hmm.
being very supportive. I mean, it's been a wonderful journey so far. Just learning the returning citizens, they teach us. And so the
Mm-hmm.
program that we use the method strength-based case management because it's a client-driven, client
Mm-hmm.
participating program. So that's important.
Mm-hmm.
It's about their lives. And then
Mm-hmm.
a lot of our staff, Dr. Hill, are made up, those are also in recovery, who's also been
Mm-hmm.
a returning citizen. So it's a mirror.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just like what the village stood for and just the impact in really caring and non-judgmental, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it was a place for those who have been experiencing barriers and challenges and trying to get out in here and get resources, because all people saw was their prison number or
Right.
what they've done, or
Mm-hmm.
and so they needed something or somebody
Mm-hmm.
to walk with them.
Mm-hmm.
So just that concept alone, I just felt that pulling. This is where I want to be. This is where I need to
Mm-hmm.
be. And the
Mm-hmm.
passion there. So every day I go to work, it doesn't feel like work. Ever.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is too awesome. Now, I tell you, when you say non-judgmental, that says a lot because as much as we, the church, like to quote the scripture about judge not lest you be judged, often we find ourselves in situations where we do judge. And so for you all to be an safe haven and to provide that mentorship slash mirroring with the formerly incarcerated and those recently coming out of incarceration. That's pretty cool. It really
Yes.
is because
Yeah.
you don't hear you don't hear that part of life. People are not going to get up and say, "Hey, here I am. I used to be this, and now I'm this," because it's not anything necessarily to be proud of uh, for those that might judge. However, it is such a need because the formerly incarcerated, it gives them something to do besides just sit around and twiddle their thumbs. You
Absolutely,
know,
because
they
because
have a reason and a
yeah,
purpose, you
yes,
know? And then
absolutely.
and then those who are just now, day before yesterday getting out, they now have to be accountable to someone who already knows the game. You can't fool me. Like I told my kids, been there, done
Yeah,
it, been there, done that
done
one.
that. Yeah.
And so this is what your clientele, your staff is doing. It is a remarkable program. It really, really is. Now, what has been the reason for well before I get into that, you also have your own personal business. Can you talk a little bit about that and what got you started on that journey? So you're going down two roads at the same time.
Yeah. So after I obtained my second degree, which is a master's in public administration, I figured, well, Chanel, you got to do something with
Mhm.
it.
Yes.
I used to a part of my journey when I my children were small. I used to work two jobs. It was two organizations and three positions. All right, I was a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to do PCA, personal care attendant, for those who had traumatic brain injuries, and I got to know the clients, the and built relationships with them, and they just stayed with me. And I always said, if God has ever gave me an opportunity, I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
start a PCA where those individuals can go out and be companions to those individuals, and then work with
Uh-huh.
them with cognitive skills and stuff like that. And so once I got my master's degree, I just thought about, now how am I going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I tell you, when God opens doors, He opens them. When He show up, He shows out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I got with an individual who says, I have the housing if you have the agency. So
Now
we got
wait, hold up. Let's let this just stop it right there. So this is how I know it's a God thing, because nationwide there's a shortage of affordable housing nationwide.
yes,
Now, here in this area, KCMO and KCK both have a shortage of housing, period,
yes,
especially in urban core areas. But here you are sharing with our audience on tonight, the first thing you got was housing for your business.
yes,
That's the
yes,
first thing.
yes.
Okay. All right. I just need to make sure I understood it right.
Yes. So
That's awesome.
so it took a while, Dr. Hill. It really took a while. In December of 2021, I had established Diverse Care, and I
Uh-huh.
came up with the name of Diverse Care because of diversity. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so the I tell you, it is not for the weak. When you're working with the state and yes, and they will education background. They want to know everything about you and all of the compliances and everything in place. So I've been working this thing, and so 2 months ago, I can say we finally opened up the first house. So I have right now
Wow.
two houses. I'm working on a third, and
Hold it, hold it. I do not compute. I mean, this is so cool. So I'm just telling you, I've been in nonprofit organizations for years. This is the first time I've ever heard this type of opportunity opening up that starts with housing made available. So
yes,
that
yes,
just shows, in my opinion, the favor of God. It
yes,
really does.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I am so grateful and thankful. Is it work? Absolutely. Is there
Yeah.
challenges? Absolutely. And there's some barriers too. And that's where my faith in God is just even more, because I have to say, this ain't Chanel. This is
Right.
God. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm just walking behind him and him showing me what I need to do. And and so I, like I said, I have a house for men and a house for women. As a matter of fact, if you did hear my phone, is we just got through placing another individual in the house for the men. And so we are working on a third house, and there will be a fourth house that's fully handicap accessible. So I am just wanting to do whatever God want me to do, Dr. Hill, and however He want me to do it. And so I'm excited for Wyandotte County because lots of
Yes.
times they talk about we don't have anything, people not doing nothing in Wyandotte County. That's not true. We're
Right.
so rich with
Exactly.
history, we're rich with people with
Yes.
passion.
Hmm.
And then I have to be honest with you is the fact that it's not easy for a Black African American woman. I
Hmm.
think sometimes we get overlooked, you know what I'm saying, with
Exactly.
education,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and so I'm just happy that God has given me the opportunity to be impactful in my community because that's so
Hmm.
important. People gave to me when I was at my lowest. People
Yes.
were there for me when I was at my lowest and struggling and being a single mom and kids little, and gave me opportunities and say, hey,
Hmm.
I believe in you. So I just want to pass that on.
Hmm.
I think with the Village Initiative and Diverse Care are doing some very important work.
Hmm.
Um, People need to be taken care of.
Yes.
Are we our brother's keeper? We sure are. We absolutely are. So,
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Well, Chanel, thank you for sharing that. And we'll come back to that in just a little bit. Your um, business and some of the challenges you have had to endure. But let's get back to the village for a minute.
sure.
So, with those coming out of incarceration, um, kind of what are any protocols do your clients have to meet before you will help them?
Well,
Do,
what we normally do, most of the time they like to come into our transitional housing for those
Mhm.
who need the housing. And so what we do before they get out of prison, we do a virtual interview, kind of get to
Oh,
know them. They see us.
uh-huh.
We have what we call a housing team. And the
Mhm.
housing team consists of the case manager, the substance use counselor, the housing manager, and myself
Mhm.
represent leadership. And we will get
Mhm.
together and we'll do the virtual Zoom meeting and they kind of see our face. We give an overview of the village because they have to decide even if we're best fit for them.
Okay.
Give us the opportunity to know who they are, some of their background, what got them where they are, where they at, what they want to do. So if it
Mhm.
sounds like something we're a good fit for each other, then we'll
Mhm.
tell them when they come out, you know, hey, let us know. Um, we go ahead and accept them to go into
Mhm.
so they get vetted.
Okay.
And so the application comes to us before we even actually do the virtual interview.
Ah,
And so once that application is looked over and then we did the virtual interview, when they get out, they bring them to the village. And
okay.
then we go back to the table again, and then we do what we call an orientation.
Now,
And then the
who
orient
brings them? Who brings them to the village?
KDOC brings them to the village,
Who?
Kansas Department of Correction.
There we go. Okay. Thank you. So the folks over the jail, not the sheriff's department, but the Kansas Department
Of Correction.
of
Yes.
Correction,
Yes.
they
Yes.
you have a contact. That's awesome.
Yes.
So they
We
don't have
yes.
to worry about transportation because you all provide the transportation. And then what if they don't have clothes or or
We have all that
other
ready for
needs?
them. We have all that ready
Okay.
for them, Dr. Hill. When they come there, once we do the orientation, which talks about the rules, the regulations, the program itself, expectations on both sides, then if they're needing food, we are Harvester's partner. So every
Okay.
Wednesday we do that curbside delivery for families. So we
Oh.
always have food. They don't have to worry about food. They don't have to worry about clothing. We
Hmm.
have a clothing closet, and Randy George's wife, Linda George, does a wonderful job in keeping that organized. It's like you're going shopping. And so,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, and that's another thing. It's about dignity. and
Yes.
making them feel like they're valued. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So that's
Hmm.
important. And so
Yes.
immediately we do the substance use assessment and the mental health assessment just to see
Okay.
where they are, and of course, case
Mhm.
management, everything is kind of tailor made to what their needs are. So we
Okay.
have a case management that walks with them and to make sure that they're the vehicle that gets them to whatever they need at the time. So if it is
Hmm.
mental health, if it is substance use, or if it's maybe they need their ID, and then
Hmm.
we'll buy the IDs, we'll get the birth
Okay.
certificate. So we'll try to chop down any barriers, anything that keeps them from moving
Uh,
forward. We even have an employment liaison, an employer liaison, and she works with them and she works with
mhm.
second chance employers, to help
Hmm.
them find jobs, and not just a job, a career. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I love to say this, in February, we're opening up the Village Cafe, and that is an entrepreneurial program for those who are
Uh-huh.
interested in becoming an entrepreneur. Not only the skills, but if they're interested in the restaurant business and the
Uh-huh.
cafe. And we have two returning citizens heading that up. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
where is that going to be located?
1629 Washington Boulevard.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, right on the
Okay.
corner.
Uh-huh.
And
And
so
so are you going to have other locations in Atlanta and Chicago?
I don't think Randy thought that far. One
But
of these,
that is,
yeah,
but this model that you're describing can work in any community,
absolutely.
especially our urban communities. This
Yes,
model
yes,
is replicable.
yes. You
That would
know,
be
yeah, one of the things I love about Randy George is that his compassion for people. And not only that, we have an at-risk program for the youth called Promise Pathways. So
yes,
trying to break that generation curse so they don't come through that door. You know what I'm saying? So
yes,
we're working
yes.
on a community cafe that will be it will be held at the Village Cafe where we can feed the
Hmm.
families and then provide a dialogue, get them to talk. Sometimes when parents and families talk, sometimes they can do resolutions for things that
Right, right.
they need help with. And so we're working on that. And so actually it's a holistic approach. The village
Yes.
to me is like a one-stop shop where we try to
Hmm.
provide that one from not on just returning citizens, but their families getting the assistance, their
Yes.
children getting their
So I
assistance.
was gonna, yes, yes. So that's my next big question is the barriers. What happens to a lot of these kids whose parents, maybe dad is incarcerated and mom might be AOL or on
Yeah,
drugs or
yeah, yeah,
moved away. What
yeah.
happens to these kids?
These kids end up in a system, whether it's the foster system or the grandmother and the grandfather raising them, and they're lost. They're lost and they feel like nobody cares,
Mm,
nobody's concerned. And it's the start of trauma,
yes, yes.
and then
Uh-huh.
if we don't catch it, that trauma
Mhm.
travels with them as they become adults. And that
Yes.
trauma could also lead to not good decisions for their future. And
Mm,
so with that, we have came up with a curriculum to identify different things that for child development, like if it's self-esteem, peer
mhm,
pressure, bullying,
mhm.
especially with the drugs in the school,
Yes,
talk
yes,
about, yeah. And so those things that need to be addressed, but I always believe we have to have the kids to tell us what that is.
yes, yes.
Because I think if we try to identify them all, we're going to miss something.
Right,
When we think this
exactly.
is the problem, they're going to say, no, this is really the problem.
This is the problem. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So,
Wow. Well,
yeah,
I'm so concerned about kids of the incarcerated. And uh, could you talk a little bit about the barriers when folks do come out of incarceration? Systemic barriers that are put in place when returning citizens return to their communities and they're unable to get a variety of things just because
Yeah.
they just come out of incarceration. Can you talk about that for a few minutes?
Yes, and it's hard to work with the individual where the roadblocks is not created by them. It's created by our
Yes,
system, right?
yes,
So like
yes.
I always didn't understand like when somebody from incarceration, a returning citizen wanted to apply for food stamps and they say you got a record so you can't get food stamps. What they gonna do about eating? Everybody has to eat, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Housing is the number one barrier.
Yes. Hmm.
Depending on what type of charge they have or what they were in prison for,
Hmm.
can hurt them as far as trying to get housing, whether it's subsidized housing or just a regular apartment. You know,
Hmm.
so that's the biggest challenge, and that's why we did the capital campaign and wanted to build more transitional housing so we can continue to work with them and try to, create relationships, with maybe landlords and that's willing to say, hey, they're in our case management. Will you work with them if we walk with them? You know,
Uh-huh.
but that's the biggest challenge is the housing piece.
Uh-huh. I
Yeah.
see. And it is tough because if you have a felon, you can't get a job, you can't get
Right.
an apartment, you
Right.
can't get
Mm-hmm.
food.
Right.
And but yet we say we don't want them in our community. We don't provide transportation for them.
No.
They get out of jail where they come right back into our communities.
Yeah.
We shut down everything, so they
Yep.
are almost forced
Yeah.
to commit a crime to
Yeah.
survive.
Because the doors close. And, every time
Yes,
I go to a door, it closes. Go to this door, it
yes.
closes. And we can't forget child support, Dr. Hill. I mean, child support
Wow.
don't stop when they're locked up. That meter's still going. So I might owe
Oh,
five hundred
wow.
dollars when I got locked up, and when I get out, it's $5,000. You know,
Yes.
so you know, um,
Mm.
we work with child support. We also do court advocacy too. So for those
Uh-huh.
who are sanctioned for child support, we
Hmm.
enroll them in the program and help them also. Mainly it's with employment, them getting
Yeah.
jobs, stuff like that, and any other assistance they need in other areas. So we try to make sure we touch, everyone in the community, as far as trying to help them become
Uh-huh.
self-sufficient, productive. Because, yeah, with the returning citizen, it's like they come out, some they just don't have nothing. But
Right.
here's what's important. We tell them to get a house, we tell them to get a car, we tell them to get a job. But here's the thing, if you don't deal with them from a cognitive aspect, they don't,
Mhm.
they come out, they're overwhelmed because the world has changed since they've been in there.
Yes.
Operating
Yes.
a cell phone can stress them out, you
Yes.
know. And so cognitively, we have to see, and that's why that mental assessment is done. We need to see
Hmm.
where their head is at when they first come out, because it's like peeling an onion,
Uh-huh.
and so
Yeah.
there has been trauma in the prison that they don't talk about. Then you got trauma when they
Wow.
was a
Yes.
child, you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And then don't you know
Right.
there's trauma when they come out here.
Hmm.
So you got all of that that you have to deal with to help them to cope,
Yes.
and to have
Yes.
feel like they have other choices and to empower them.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
yeah.
And you can understand why they may choose to self-medicate
Yes.
because of all the trauma and all the doors that continue to
Right.
shut
Right.
and right in front of them. But then they have organizations like the Village Initiative that is there with open arms to help them, which goes right back to that scripture that talks about help the oppressed, take
Yes.
care of the fatherless. Just
Right.
think how many thousands of both men and women that are in our prison systems that not grow up with their fathers.
Absolutely.
They,
And that's, yeah, one of the
yes,
things that is important with the that risk youth program, because those children are angry when their parents are
yes,
incarcerated. So one of the things we talked about is that if we can reach those that's still incarcerated and they worry about their children. I know one individual was telling me how they have the angel tree that comes inside the
yes,
prison, and
yes,
how that made them feel like they were still contributing to their children or to that
yes.
household. And so I
Uh-huh.
thought about, what if we did something more than that? What if they identify for us their children. And he said, yes, if you're on the outside to help my children, help prepare them for me coming out. You know how wonderful that can be, because one of the things that are is a goal for the village is to reunify families. That's important,
Uh-huh.
but that's it
Hmm.
takes some time. It takes some counseling, you know.
Yes.
And so it's a lot of that with the
Hmm.
returning citizens. They're losing their children, their wives. It's an
Hmm.
adjustment, you know. You've been
Yes.
gone for
Yes.
10 years, and I did the thing by myself and raised the kids by myself, you know. So
Right.
it's
Right.
also forgiveness. Forgiveness is a part of that.
Whew. And we haven't said anything about this subject that I'm getting ready to share now, but restorative justice. If is there any cases maybe where a returning citizen did a crime towards another individual? Do you all help them restore some relationship or be accountable for that at all? What do you all do with cases
That's a
like that?
big piece. That's part of that cognitive piece I talk about. Is
Okay,
really taking
okay,
ownership of what you have done and
okay.
accountable for that. And how
Yeah,
do I make it right? What do I need
yeah.
to do? And I remember
Wow.
one individual that he said when he got out, he was mad. He was mad. He was mad. He felt like we owed him something. Then he had to stop and
Oh,
think as we working with him. He's like, they don't owe me anything. I was the menace to society. So I always say, hey, you're gonna come from being a menace to society to a mentor in society. So, you know, but yes, that's a big piece. Dr.
okay.
Hill is that restorative piece, letting them see
Hmm.
truly what they have done and how it have impacted
Hmm.
so many areas in their life. And like, okay, so you see what you've done and you see where it brought you. So now you
Yeah.
know if you make that same decision, did that work out for you for the first time? You know, and then talk about the relationships that were impacted. You know, what
Hmm.
can we do to help you, you know, restore those relationships? And
Hmm.
so with that, we have the self, we call the self-support groups that
Hmm.
are in place that helps with that too.
Can I just say I thank you. I appreciate this has been a fabulous show on tonight. You are a wealth of information.
Thank
Would
you.
you share Village Initiative's contact information
Sure.
and also your information?
Sure. For the Village Initiative, you can call our office at 913-291 um 291 1600. I get them mixed up. And you
Uh-huh.
could just ask for me. I'm the program director, Chanel McKinley. Or you
Okay.
could just say what it is that you may need, and we'll make sure you get to the right person. Our
Okay.
website is www.villageinitiativeinc.com. So you can look up our website. We just revised it, and it's a wonderful website. So you can get on our website. If you want to inquire through the website, you can do that also. And for
Thank you.
diverse care, you can reach me at 913. I get these numbers so mixed up. You can reach me at 913-449-1282. And
Okay.
so, yeah, and then you can call, or I have a website too. It's diversecarekc.com. And then you can, you know, look at my website and see the services that I provide.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Miss Chanel McKinley. This has been fabulous. And again, thank you for coming to Shades in Justice podcast with your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill. Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for being at our show on tonight. This is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Another great evening to be alive. Hey, this is Positive Power Christian Radio. Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, see you next time. You can meet me every Wednesday at 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Standard Time right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. See you next time. Bye.